Welcome to the Missionary Disciple Podcast. Today we have with us Holly Leonard and Joel Renier. And yes, that is the same name as my last name. Are we related?
I don't know, actually. Might be distant, like it's mother-son relationship
cousin.
Or something.
Mother-son.
Yeah, I think potentially.
Nice to meet you.
It's nice to
This is
meet
my
you.
son, Joel. We call him Joe, so that's what we'll call him here in this podcast. So today we're looking at phases of the campus movement, phases of a movement, and we're going to be focusing in on continuation and celebration. So we have a lot to say about it. It's the end. It's the end of the little list of phases, and it ends up blending right into the beginning all over again. It's very circular. So we're going to just try to narrow in on what continuation and celebration is. And in just a quick survey of it, it's celebrating what has happened, what's been going on in the movement, what has the Lord been doing, and it's entering into the joy of that and preparing for the continuation of what has begun. So we don't want it to just be a celebrate in part ways. We want there to be some sort of follow-up. So let's talk more about that. Either of you can just pop in and just tell us like what that looked like for you on campus, celebration, continuation. I guess celebration first.
So celebration is it's one of the most exciting times of the year because everything's wrapping up. So all the good stuff that like started at our like with preparation, activation, outreach, all that like going throughout the semester, it's the bow at the end of the...
It's Christmas. Is that what we're saying?
It's basically Christmas, right? In the first semester, it actually leads right into Christmas.
Yeah, all the presents.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, celebration is just a really exciting time on campus where we're seeing our great expectations for our students' lives, that they've been fulfilled. And then we have the exciting opportunity to celebrate that and cement that in their lives. And basically build a wave of momentum through celebrating what's gone on campus that actually will carry forward into the next semester. But at the end of the year, it needs to be an even bigger wave because that momentum actually has to carry people all the way through the summer on campus into the next outreach.
Right, because we're concerned about them losing steam. And then by the time they come back, for us on campus, it's summer or Christmas break. That then they're not into it, and then I hit the microphone. But they're not into it, and then they're gonna fade out. So we want to keep their joy high as much as we can to minimize that little bit of a drop that we can expect. But then we want to catch them again on the preparation phase, which is coming up in another podcast. Okay, so what do you mean by celebration? Like Christmas tree presents? Like what are you guys actually doing?
I think it's like a grace in that time at the end of the semester that there's joy building in the hearts of the missionaries. I can remember being, on campus and there's so much hard work, right? There's so much praying and hard work, like planting seeds and watering and kind of hoping and praying that by leading the faith study week after week, praying for our people, inviting them to events. Sometimes they come, sometimes they haven't. There's like an intimate journey of me with the Lord for my people, and them, interacting with the invitations I've been placing before them. And we expect them to be giving yeses along the way to Jesus or to leadership opportunities. And by the end, there's all these like low-lying fruits, right, on a tree that we can expect to see and pick and talk about and rally people around it to delight and say, look what God's done in this life, in this situation, in this leader. So we're maybe tired, from the long haul of mission and of work, but because we've been expecting to see this fruit, there's an energy in us, there's an excitement in us that translates over to our leaders for their people, and that we have this culture and formally putting it in place at the end, like, let's make time, let's carve out an explicit way to talk about these lives that have been changed in all the different ways, from like a new member who's experienced conversion, to a leader who wasn't a leader at the beginning of the semester, but now is courageous enough through their journey to say yes to mission, like overseas or leading a study. Like there's so many layers of things happening. So we want to pause as a team with our leaders and say, okay, how can we celebrate this best? What kind of stuff can we do to make it feel like a big deal that it is, that it doesn't just come and go?
Okay, so you're talking about celebrating conversions to being excited about mission or being a first-time leader or some sort of fruit that's shown up that is like a win, a success.
That's right.
Something that the Holy Spirit has done this person. But you're still not telling me what you guys do to celebrate.
Yeah.
What are you guys doing?
So it ranges from a lot of things. Like
All-inclusive vacations.
Yeah, exactly. It's money. It's
Money,
it's all the
gifts.
things.
No, what do you guys do? Seriously.
So yeah, it can be like at a formal event, which I can kind of like, I can share some stories about how we've done that. But I think something that like kind of my reflection on celebration is that it's actually like it's a way of life of a missionary. Is like Dad in previous podcasts talks about the importance of celebrating conversion, right? When someone's life is changed, we actually have to celebrate that. It's a big deal. You know,
So don't wait till Christmas. Celebrate it right away.
Yeah.
Something's happened here.
Yeah, so like it could be lesson 3 of the Discovery Faith study, and someone acknowledges Jesus is Lord, and making a big deal of that, not just saying, okay, cool, great, move on. Like sit there with them and delight in them, and because that actually will cement for them the significance of what happened.
Would you bring other people into that?
Yeah, so for me as a student, like when I first saw Celebration lived out, it was Megan Turland. She was one of the missionaries, and I was leading my first ever Discovery Faith study with a guy I went to high school with. He was an atheist and totally shut off to all faith. And by lesson 3, actually, of Discovery, he acknowledged it. After lesson 3, he acknowledged Jesus is God. Lesson 5, he put Jesus at the center of his life. And then at one of our adoration nights, he had this powerful encounter with Jesus in confession, and his life was changed forever. And I remember being on campus the following week, and Megan knew the story. She knew what had happened in his life. And he was kind of in our CCO communal spot. And so she calls every single person that's around. She says, everyone come sit around. So we're all kind of sitting in chairs. There's probably like 20 of us. And she gets this young man to stand up in front of everyone and share his story. And it was for me as his faith study leader, I'm so proud to see him up there sharing his story. And it was significant because after he shares his story, everyone just stands up and claps. You know, and everyone's celebrating, making a big deal of it. And I know for him, because easily after conversion, you can kind of, oh, well, you know, it was fake. It was just,
right.
It was me in my head. But sharing the story publicly actually makes it real for you. And I remember seeing that and seeing how significant that was in his life. And that's something that's always stuck with me. So when I'm on campus, or even when I'm on a mission trip, when someone puts Jesus at the center of their life, we actually will like bring them back to where everyone else is. And I'll go, did you guys hear what Steve just did? Okay. Like, no, what did he do? I'm like, Steve, why don't you share with them? He goes, I put Jesus at the center of my life. And then people make like this crazy big deal, like clapping, hooting, hollering, hugging, like, and it makes people feel loved, delighted in, but it shows them we value what just happened. It's actually a big deal. It's not just, you know, I decided to tie my shoelace, that this is like getting married kind of thing, how people celebrate that. So,
Holly, what does it do for the community?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. Like it can almost sound like a movie, and maybe some people can listen and be like, oh, I can never, like my person would never say it that clearly. What if I put them up and they said it weird? Or what if everyone else is busy? Some of our gathered spaces, there's like a lot of studies happening. I don't want to interrupt, but all of those things were worked through. Like we just stopped and it just was okay. And we just let him share the way it made sense to him in that moment. And you're right, like the impact on the community and on the other leaders at every level of where they're at in their faith and in mission, in the thresholds, it impacted them. Like you were impacted, you were a leader. It brought you further in your understanding of mission and the importance of celebration of conversion. It made him feel like his story matters, and he'll live out of that in the future when he leads others, that it matters. And we work through as leaders the awkwardness of like, it doesn't matter. It's medium awkward to do this, but the advantage of multiplying what matters most, like that's what's more important here. So we're just going to work through that. And I was celebrated like that in my conversion in the gathered space at the University of Ottawa, like kind of whoever was around, whether I knew them or not, they were pulled together to listen to my revelation, which was probably super choppy, but what was glowing from me and coming from me, they knew was true and good, and that I had an encounter, and they knew, okay, we've got to celebrate this, like for her, but for the leaders here. And you're right, that's like an impactful moment, you know, in our formation. And I can imagine in some of the places where faith studies are happening on our Connect campuses or elsewhere, it's easy to feel like it's just dinky or it's not enough or whatever. Like it's not it's not big enough for me to make a big deal, but it actually is. If it's one or two other people that you can bring together and say, this matters, even just one other leader coming over to Delight, doesn't have to be 20, but that living out of that and grabbing them and celebrating it, like it makes them feel like, what? Like, this is what you guys are celebrating. This is what matters. And yeah, it is. This is what we've lived like the entire 12 weeks up till now for, is this moment, right? Yeah.
Well, there's a leadership maxim that says culture is determined by what you celebrate and tolerate. And so when we celebrate growth and leadership and experiencing the Lord and conversion, we are forming the culture on campus. We're forming something for the whole body, the whole movement, all the members. So it's not just to make that person feel in the club. It's got a bigger win. And that culture is palpable in CCO. Like, people are happy and motivated by all of these kinds of stories. And I just think, like, even in dioceses and parishes, like, when do they get to hear good news stories?
Like, God is on the move. Like, stuff's
like, this happened
happening
in my life. Like, we just don't hear those. They're happening for sure, but they're just like, my faith is private. I've got a beautiful thing. I'm not going to talk about it. But it would do so much to encourage others to have greater expectations if they knew what God was doing. Okay, maybe let's go back more to these celebrations, like this as a phase. Now you're talking more like you want it to be infused all over the place.
Yeah.
But like as a phase itself, like what are some celebration things that you'd recommend?
So, from my experience kind of on campus, what things that we do is kind of often at the end of the year, we'll have an end of the year party with our students. So whether it's like on campus or, at
for
a
all
student's
students,
house. Yeah,
like
all students are welcome. And it's just a time of creating momentum. And we encourage our faith study leaders is to, talk to your people about their stories, encourage their people to go and share your story with someone else. And we do stuff like that just to create momentum that we're celebrating all that God has done this year. We'll like open in prayer, like a missionary will go up and speak and kind of, God's done amazing things this year. Like, raise your hand if you put Jesus center your life, stuff like that, people are kind of able to own it and acknowledge it and we clap. On most CCO campuses, what we do is an end of the year celebration event, kind of not like an informal party, but a bit more of maybe like a banquet or like kind of get together. And the win of that is basically to celebrate what God has done. And so we make sure not just to celebrate when someone puts Jesus at the center of their life, because that's awesome, but there's also the ongoing process of discipleship, of your walk with Jesus growing in holiness and mission. So we also want to honor and celebrate people on all stages of the framework, which is we've spoken about in other podcasts.
Looks like an hourglass.
Yeah. So people that maybe they led their very first faith study.
Okay.
Maybe they're part of one of our key leaders on campus, like event planning and stuff like that. And we want to honor those people. So at our year-end event, typically we try and have, because there are 2 campuses in Ottawa, we'll have 6 testimonies.
Okay.
So we'll have a testimony from each campus of a life changed, a conversion, someone putting Jesus at the center of their life. And also that's just the process of working on a testimony, like to be prepared is really awesome, because the student actually has to articulate clearly what happened, which actually can make it all the more real in their life, because you're walking them through exactly how the message of the charisma changed their life.
Yeah.
And even showing them that you sharing your testimony is an evangelistic opportunity, that someone could actually have a conversion in the crowd just through you sharing your story.
Yeah, right.
So it's actually their first step in being missionary.
Yeah.
So we'll do that, and then we'll have a set of testimonies on a missionary conversion. So maybe a student going up and sharing about their experience of leading a discovery study, their very first study, and how the Lord worked through them. Maybe we have a student who went on one of our February break missions, and they would go up and share that story. Maybe at a summit, they went up to a random person. A summit is our Eucharistic adoration night. So at kind of a spiritual outreach event, they went and shared the Ultimate Relationship booklet. They shared the EUR, the charisma with their Uber driver, and them going up and sharing that story and honoring that.
Okay. So by missionary conversion, you mean them stepping into or feeling a draw to do mission, and then the joy of that mission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
them sharing their experience of maybe their first time doing it. And that also inspires people in the crowd. It shows them that these are things we celebrate. These are things that you should strive for. So students who are just sitting there maybe have had a conversion but never really had a drive to be missionary, then they're seeing, well, I could be that guy. I could lead a discovery study, and that could be a turning point for them.
Right.
And it makes a difference between like club and movement. Like when you hear about those things
Yeah.
happening, right? You're talking about culture. Like when you see, wow, that's what's going on here. And to the degree to which like you're involved and that you're impacted, like you're still brought a little bit further in the vision, even for a new participant, or a leader or like a really engaged leader. And when I think about the different sizes of movements and communities that like are listening and are growing, they might not be able to do events like of this size or even find those specific level of glory stories like or of testimonies, but like taking a look at your group that you're working with, like your movement and your missionaries, and saying, okay, what are the layers of people that I have like who have moved further, like either a participant was involved and they brought like something to the end of your potluck that we did, and I'm going to write them a card and I'm going to celebrate that. And that's what I have access to. I'm a leader on a campus. I can write a card and let them know I saw that and I appreciated that, and that helped in a way for the mission to be fulfilled that night. And I saw you and I noticed you, and all the way up, like you're talking, like leading the faith study, coming to mission, coming to Rise Up, that we notice at every level how everyone moved, and that as a leadership team or a staff team or a Connect team, we're stopping and thinking and writing a bit of the tree of what we saw happen and articulating the fulfilled great expectations, even through cards or stages with testimonies or dinners at a restaurant where we maybe have room in our budget to order some appetizers together and make a moment of it, But I'm just exploring like, hey, what would I do if I had limited resources and I couldn't do something formal? How can I does it still matter? And it totally does. Like think of when we receive cards, right? With words, like we feel seen and noticed. It's so different than in our culture. Like to have a handwritten card is still has an impact.
Yeah, it does not have to be a banquet.
No.
It can be just even a at-home potluck event. But you have like these personal touches where you're either speaking words of honoring to them or writing those words or even like a little card with a little gift. It could be like a homemade cookie. Like it's just like, oh, they thought of me. Like, that being seen is just so big. And I really liked what you said at the beginning there about it's the difference between being a club and a movement, because if you just take this at face value, it just says, okay, have a party. A wrap-up party.
Sure.
But we are intentional about that celebration. This isn't a party for the sake of a party. There's choosing the testimony, finding the honoring, how to like speak into the lives of the people. And you guys, you're telling me on the drive in like about a celebration that you guys had where it went into a time of prayer and praying for the next semester. That was really neat.
Yeah, so one thing that we do is at the end of the year, we bring all of our leaders together and we'll do, so it's super informal. It's a potluck. We're like ordering wings or something like that.
Okay.
And we all get together, it'll be like in like our team leaders in her house. And so we're like all kind of packed into a space and it's like a family reunion. And it's a time where we enjoy being around each other, and then we open up the floor for people to share glory stories from their experience of leading this year.
Okay, just organically.
Yeah. So people just start like throwing out stories and we like clap, we celebrate, sharing great expectations that have been fulfilled. And so we kind of go through that, and then we go into time of prayer. And it's something that we started about 2 years ago. It happened like extremely organically. It wasn't I don't think something we even necessarily planned, or maybe we planned for it to be short. And so we pulled out the scriptures and we just started interceding for the campus. It was the end of the year, and we're thinking about next year, and we're like, Lord, because it's celebration and continuation, right? It's going looking forward. So we start saying, Lord, what you did is awesome this year, but what's happening next year? So we started praying and asking for a word, and the Lord spoke extremely clearly to us. The word we got that year was, the harvest is plentiful. And that word of the harvest. And then one of the guys opened up his Bible, and it was reading about the harvest. And Jesus says, there's a saying, 4 months and then the harvest. And he goes, how long is a university summer? And we're like, 4 months. And so we just felt this huge confirmation from the Lord. And actually that led to celebration. We left and people were like, I had guys come up and be like, I've never done anything like that. And like the Holy Spirit moving so clearly, speaking the exact same word to everyone, they just were all the more bought in. And then when we went into the next year and we're casting the vision that our great expectation for the campus is that actually the Lord was going to double our movement.
Wow.
We were going to have twice as many students completing faith studies by the end of the year, which is going to take a lot of work. It meant going from like basically 150 people to 300.
Wow.
It's a lot.
That's crazy.
And that's a scary thing to invite your students into.
Right.
But they were so into it because it wasn't something we were telling them to do. It's something that they had discovered with the Lord the year
Right.
previously.
Right.
It was a shared experience.
Yeah. So it was kind of their word. Now it was their movement. It was their thing. Yeah. So that's like a thing we do now at the end of every semester. And it really sets us up well for high momentum and that they're seeing fruit. Because if you were doing things and there was absolutely no fruit, there was nothing to celebrate, it'd be pretty difficult to be motivated next semester to go and start again.
Yeah.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I love that. I just love all the things about it. It's bringing them into the leadership. There's buy-in because you weren't just dictating, okay, guys, we have a new goal. It's double. It's like an elf and let's start making that's toys again next year. Like
Yeah.
it's Christmas Day, we got to start working again. But yeah, it's too lofty and like, why would they do that to me?
Right.
But when you were there and you're part of, and you were
Discovering
one of the
it,
persons that read that scripture and you're amazed, then the buy-in and the knowledge that the Lord is leading us into something, you'll want to put your shoulder into that cross. You'll want to push through. How did it go that semester?
So we hit our goal.
Really?
By the end of the year, we had doubled our campus.
Wow.
It was crazy. We did our outreach, in the second semester, and basically we were telling them we need to hit, because there's, people signing up and then people who
Dropping
actually
out.
end up in this study. So we had to go, I think we had to aim for over 500 people putting in their contacts. And it was crazy because that meant like way more surveys being done and inviting our students into that. And we're like, we know this is hard. We know this is actually going to be a struggle for you guys. You're going to have to make a lot of sacrifices. But they were so bought in that they were doing it. Like people were at the table and they were like filling sheets and just like going hard. And then we realized we don't have enough. So the next week we did another set of outreach. And people are just like back to back to back to back to back follow-up meetings in a coffee shop, inviting people to take discovery. But as hard as it was super exciting.
So no one was mad about it
No.
because they knew why it was
Yeah,
happening.
they were tired. They probably was inconvenient, but they were motivated because it was their goal too.
Yeah.
It
And I
wasn't-
think that's like an important piece, like about goals, because in building ministries, it's like, well, we don't want to set a number. Like, let's just do our best, like
Right.
let's do what we can. Like, we're only 2 or 3 here. Like, we don't want to get stuck by a number, or there's like intimidation towards like choosing a number. So when you're explaining just the flow of that time that you took, and I'm imagining like our other friends that are leading, and they're like, okay, so I have to do another event, and at that event, like I'll celebrate, and at that I'll try to be spiritual. Like, how can I do this? Well, we know that we're already gathering, with our leaders and equipping them throughout the semester. Maybe we have a rhythm of like every other Tuesday, right, that we're chatting about what's going on or equipping, and we can just carve out that the last Tuesday of our time, even if it's in the middle of the day, is this kind of an approach where we're celebrating and we're leaving room for the Spirit. And even, if we're nervous, like we can be courageous and do kind of what you said. We can open the scriptures, take the initiative, and ask God to speak so that we're not scared of a number. We're not scared of a goal. It's His goal. It's His people that He wants us to reach. And we can be filled like with courage to do that, because just choosing a number and getting to work on it can be like demotivating. Like it can break up. It can make people feel like, they're just a part of a cog of a system or something like this. But to be there matters. That it was all the leaders together that could get together on that day, and that God spoke and inspired a number, right, and inspired a vision. Carries us through when it's hard to get more surveys. Carries us through those sacrifices of the outreach season. That are notable in the following year, and you can kind of like feast on that word, when it's harder. So I think that's like that's what I'm getting out of your story is like that it really matters to come from the Lord, to come from the Word, and that numbers don't have to be scary to aim for in our goals.
Yeah, and maybe we'll talk about numbers in the first of this series, which is kind of the last of the series, going into preparation.
That's right next.
It just goes around and around. But I'm just going to land this phase right now. So what we have is the celebration and this blending into the continuation. How do we keep this going? And it's got this evaluative piece of, what went well this semester, what didn't go well, what's the Lord saying. We want to keep people with their gaze high, that they're ready to, get into the next phase, the next semester. And really, it does just blend right into the next phase. So that's where we can meet you again. Even though we began with preparation, we're really going back into preparation, because the things that we learned, the things that we would redo, the things that were awesome, the things we need to build on, the upcoming leaders, we want to keep that all in perspective and apply that to our preparation. And so with that, we will leave you, and we'll see you again in the preparation phase.